Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is a Champagne geek, lavender farmer, and award-winning author of 5 books. She has pursued decades of delicious research in the wine caves and cellars of France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Argentina, and California. She is a champagne historian, tour guide, and champagne cocktail creator for Breathless Wines. When my guest discovered the real-life stories of the champagne widows of France, she knew she'd dedicate years to telling the stories of these remarkable women who made champagne the worldwide phenomena it is today. Her series of novels, Champagne Widows, meets her commitment to their stories. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Rebecca Rosenberg.
Thank you, Julia. How fun to be here. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, I had a lavender business that took up all my time. So we had the largest lavender producing company in America, and we had that for 20 years. And I live on a lavender farm here in Sonoma vineyard country. And we grew lavender because we knew we didn't have enough acreage to grow grapes. So lavender seemed like the perfect complement to that. And once I started meeting all the lavender farms around the country, and there are 300 different lavender farms, they loved our products because we actually sewed and made candles and did all sorts of things, did potpourris, all sorts of things, heated spa products. Once I started learning about the lavender fields around the country, I knew I wanted to write a book about them because lavender, as you probably know, is so healing and so wonderful and has so many beneficial properties that I had to write a book. And that was really the first time it came to me that I would like to write, even though I've been writing all my life. So then I was hooked after that first one and kept going.
Well, then, which came first, your love of wine or learning about these champagne widows?
Well, I actually had a couple of books in between there. So actually, the Champagne Widows are my 4th and 5th books that I've written. So I've always loved wine, I have to admit, from the time I was 21. And I always loved sparkling wine. This one is the Pommery wine, which I just wrote a book about the woman who made that. And then the first book was about Veuve Clicquot, and you've probably seen that beautiful orange label around. So I was really intrigued with sparkling wine specifically because it's so hard to make. It takes like twice as long to make. And that's why it's so expensive. So I thought about these people that really labor to create this wondrous thing called champagne.
Well, that's just really fascinating. And I want to hear just a snippet more about the Champagne Widows that you found out about and your inspiration for those books.
Love to tell you. So the first one we talked about is about Veuve Clicquot. And this is in 1800. which is a whole different world. And she lived in the town of Reims, which is in Champagne, France. And she actually knew Napoleon. So Napoleon plays a huge part in this book because Barbara Nicole Clicquot was a very rich woman, it turned out, but women had no rights at all to own businesses or do any kind of business on their own or even work without their husband's permission. So she wanted to start a champagne house because actually the segment that I'm going to read you is about why she had to start a champagne house. But she wasn't allowed to unless she had a husband who would agree to it. So she ends up marrying her childhood sweetheart, who she can kind of boss around, and they start this wonderful champagne business. But unfortunately, Napoleon engages in 15 years of wars. And so it was impossible for her to sell this champagne out of the country. In fact, it was illegal. He made it illegal. And she goes through quite a few antics and some illegal activities to get her wine through his cadre of ships that was guarding the French champagne, because he knew champagne was what Russia wanted, what all the countries loved, coveted the French champagne, and he wasn't about to let anyone have it. So it's really about her battle with Napoleon and how she gets around him. So it's fun story. In 1800s, are you kidding? That's just crazy.
It is crazy. I don't know how those women were so strong and became so powerful, and their legacy continues today in spite of everything that they were having to live through.
As you said that, I'm struck with the fact that they had it so hard that they had to really rise up out of themselves and do something extraordinary. And a few women really did, just like the next book, which is Madame Pommery. Look at this beautiful artwork. By the way, the artwork on these covers are actual champagne posters that they used to sell the champagne at the time. Like, people have thought that this one was a 1920s type of gal, but it isn't. It's from that era. And so it's an actual champagne poster. And I have more Champagne Widows books coming out. And so I will always feature a beautiful poster. But Madame Pommery's story is almost the opposite. She was 40 years old when she was widowed, and she had never worked. She was a volunteer who created an orphanage in a cathedral, and she taught those orphans etiquette, the rules. She taught them the rules. And the reason she did that is because they would all go into service as maids and cooks and all of that, and they had to learn the rules. And the fun part about this book is she learned that the rules got her nowhere, that she had to break the rules in order to succeed. So she was left a widow at 40, had to figure out what she wanted to do. She had no experience at all. And she decided she not only would she make champagne, but she would make the first dry champagne in the world called Brut. And now Brut is all we drink. And so she actually revolutionized the way we drink champagne forever. And of course, all the men who were already making champagne wouldn't help her out and told her champagne tasted like razor blades going down your throat. So I love, her guts and her persistence and the way she was also. So Madame Pommery and Veuve Clicquot, I just adored their stories and had to tell them.
I love that you found that niche and such fascinating stories, and being able to share those with your readers. And all of your books, were they published differently? Did you search for an agent, use a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish from your first until your fifth?
I have a publisher. I have two different publishers, and I've also self-published. So I've done the gamut. And the next book that I'm writing, I will go through the whole thing of trying to find an agent and all of that, which is a very difficult process. But I have found that having a publisher is nice. When I did that in my first book that was published was called The Secret Life of Mrs. London. And I had the traditional publisher, which was great because I didn't know anything about how everything works. But I found that when you have a publisher, you don't have the freedom to do a lot of things. You know, they own the rights. In fact, I have no rights to that book. I can't promote it. I can't do anything. I can't tell. I look at the ratings and see that it's super high still, like after 6-7 years. So they're doing things with it, but they don't even tell you after a while. And so it's a whole different thing. And I really I did these books through my own publisher. And what's exciting about that is you have total freedom to do what you need to do and want to do to make a beautiful product. And I've been designing products for our lavender business for 20 years. So, and before that, I was in advertising and marketing. So I love to create the whole thing. And I'll give you an example of publishing, which is crazy. My first book, Mrs. London, The Secret Life of Mrs. London, won a prestigious national award. And my publisher didn't want that award. And so they never used it. It's a big award, and it was a gold award. And I was thrilled being my first published book. And they didn't want to use it. They didn't feel that they fit in that category of that award. And so they never used it. It's not on the book. It's nowhere. And so that is when I decided, I'm not sure I want to keep going this route. But then the decision was kind of made for me, because the next book I wrote was set in 1870. And the publisher wasn't publishing books from the 19th century at all. They only wanted 20th century historical fiction. So I said, well, I had already been working on that book for a long time, so I wasn't going to let it die. I loved it. In fact, I'm writing the sequel to it right now, and it won 2 gold awards. The book that they rejected won 2 gold awards. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll play my own game for a while. And it's fun.
And there are just so many options that we have today that we didn't a few years ago. So I think you can run the gamut of however you want to publish, and you can have a variety of those. I've heard from so many authors who some self-publish, and they have a publishing house and they do what they want to. So I love the freedom of that, and learning, how to do all of that. I think it just, makes your journey stronger.
It is stronger, although it takes a lot more work. It's got to be double the work. And the work is very different from each other. To create a beautiful literary book is totally different than learning how to publish it, and totally different from learning how to market it. So, but, I'm a businesswoman at heart, so it's all good for me. And that's why I do well writing about women who forged their own path. They give me courage when I get, upset with it.
Exactly. That's a great inspiration for all of us today. And I'm so excited that you're writing about that you get to travel all over the world to do research, and you can write that off as a business expense.
I keep telling my husband that. We led a tour through Champagne last year, and he never wrote it off. And I said, we were leading the tour. I planned it. We did it. And now, after this meeting with you, we're planning another cruise with Champagne. So that's exciting. And yes, I get to speak about Champagne. What's so bad about that? It's all
Nothing.
good.
Yes, that sounds very exciting. And I would take those gold awards and stick those stickers on all those books, whether the publisher liked it or not, because
I do, but they sell the book mostly, so it just goes nowhere. Oh well, I know they're there.
yes, you have to put them on your website and
Yeah.
know that people are going to see those, because even a less prestigious award, we use those wherever we can. So I would certainly be using those. And talking about publicity, have you had the challenges that most writers have? Because we like to be writing, but we don't like to promote ourselves. And I know you're a businesswoman and used to promotion, and I was in public relations and marketing myself, but it's a little different in this book industry. Have you found anything that works for you, or maybe something
Yes.
you tried that didn't work?
Yes. Well, the best thing I could say to a self-published author or an author that's with a small press is to join IBPA, which is the International Book or Independent Book Publishing Association, because I have found that they have fantastic and real programs. There will be a million people at you all the time to spend your money promoting with this thing and that thing and the other thing, but they're for real. And an example is when I go out and do their media outreach, to your specific question, for these books, for Champagne, I will get 50 inquiries from really top-notch media. And I just sent another one out because October 27th, to be specific, is World Champagne Day. So this is an idea, you find the issues or the commonalities in your books and you promote, because reporters are interested in what my readers will want to know about. And people that like champagne will want to know about World Champagne Day. So what did I do? Send out a whole thing about these books and how they relate to Champagne Day. And we have two events that are coming up that promote Champagne Day, and they can even order the champagne and get a whole tasting menu and all that good stuff. So find something in your books that relates to something that people want to read in the newspaper or in the media today. And then go ahead and get on that media outreach list, because it really works.
You are singing to the choir, because I just taught a session at a writer conference about that very thing, about taking days during the month that are national calendar days,
Yes.
like you talked about, and promoting those and using them on your social media. So I think that's a great idea. I didn't know there was a National Champagne Day, but I'm happy to know that now, and that's certainly your day to shine.
Plus, like along that line, once you get that idea, then you find out, oh, well, there's also a Chardonnay Day, and there's an American Champagne Day, which is in December. So I'll be doing it again, because the media is looking for fun things to talk about, because the news is so dreary and awful. So if we can brighten their day with something positive or a cause, I have a friend who's written a book about a disabled veteran. Well, that is perfect for media. So anything that you can figure out that relates to the news cycle.
Absolutely. It really works. And especially small newspapers are understaffed, and they will run your press release almost verbatim, the story that you send them for those days, to celebrate those days.
Thing that I have discovered, though, and for a little tip, is if you have an event, if you're talking local media, or if you're talking national media, if you have an event that people can go to get more involved with that, then that is even better, because that's a call to action. And so that's why we're, like in this case, on October 5th, we're going to have a Zoom and invite the entire country to find out how they can celebrate World Champagne Day, which is later in the month. And then we're having an event at a performing arts center where this one will be really fun, where we're having judges. These are certified judges of wine. And we're doing a blind tasting of the sparkling wine. Notice this is my cover. The sparkling wine versus real champagne. So it's a blind tasting. So we already have sold 100 tickets, and I'm sure we haven't even really started promoting it yet. So that's the kind of exciting, fun things that you can do. And I've done that with every book that I've done. From my lavender book, we did lavender festivals, and we had 5,000 people on our property wandering the lavender field. So yes, you and I come from the same background, advertising and marketing.
It's great, and I'm already in my head having you in a streaming service and on the History Channel with all of your books. I can see those made into movies.
So from your mouth to God's ears, as they say.
Were there any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that might have improved your writing journey?
Now I've been through probably 15 years of major seminars and all that. And I would say the ones that stand out to me are Donald Maas, anything by Donald Maas, and that is MAAS. His things are fantastic and very inspirational. And I've done week-long things with him, a couple of those, and any seminar I can do with him, I would always do. And I continue to do them. And even now, I have a favorite author who runs a class that is over 9 months, writing your novel in 9 months. And here I've written 6 novels already, but I wanted to do it just to keep me, to keep me motivated and to keep me on track. And it has really worked. Plus, I wanted to learn to write faster because I write like a book in 2 years. And she said 9 months. So I've done the 9 months. I've done the 8 months, and I've done the first draft, and now I'm into my second draft. So it does help me get it rolling quicker. And then I did take, if you have longer time and money, then you can go to a university and take a course there. And I went to Stanford University for a 2-year course. That was a combination of in-person and online. And I found it invaluable. That was my first published book. So it really gave me a professional polish to an idea. So we have ideas about books, but people wonder. I have lots of friends who want to write books and they can't really make that hurdle. Take a long class. This one that I'm taking now is called Novel in 9 by Michelle Richmond. And it's fabulous for people who don't know how to get started.
Well, that's great advice. And I too love coaches and classes. And I even did NaNoWriMo. You talk about trying to write fast.
Yeah.
It almost did me in.
I did a draft in NaNoWriMo. It's a big mess.
I know. Being an English major, I always would write a few sentences and go back and edit those few sentences. Well, in NaNoWriMo, which is 50,000 words in the month of November, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, you just have to get the words on paper every day, and then you'll have a mess to edit at the end.
And I do believe in that process, that you need to get that whole story down before you go back and do all that beautiful editing and wordsmithing and all that good stuff. Well,
talking about wordsmithing, because you are certainly an expert, a master at that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the passages that you've brought to share today, and then read so we can hear your tone and voice in your book?
Lovely. So I'm reading from Champagne Widows, and I am reading the moment. It's from the first scene, but I'm just reading a 3-sentence passage. It's the moment that Barbara Nicole Clicquot discovers why she has to make champagne, because she is a privileged girl who's grown up in Champagne and wants for nothing, I've been to all of her properties. I mean, they had several and massive vineyards already. And her father was the biggest employer in town with 1,000 people working at his wool factory. And he was the mayor and he was on Napoleon's board. So why did this rich little girl decide that she needed to work and make a champagne factory? So this scene is where her grand-mère, who's very old, grand-mère is French for grandmother, and she's very old, and she is trying to convince Barbara Nicole that she has a blessing that her mother calls a curse, and it's called le nez, the nose. So that's le nez is French for the nose. So grand-mère has taken her down into the criers where all the bottles are stored for wines underneath Champagne. And that's true. The whole town has 200 kilometers of these beautiful caves. So she's taken her down in the caves, and grand-mère is ready to die, just so you know. So here we go. Grand-mère places a bunch of grapes in my hands and brings it to my nose. What comes to you? Well, the grapes smell like ripening pears and maybe a hint of hawthorn berry. She chortles and replaces the grapes with another bunch. What about these? Drawing their aroma up to the top of my palate, I picture gypsies around a fire, smoky, deep, and complex. Grilled toast and coffee? Her next handful of grapes are sticky and soft, the aroma so robust and delicious, my tongue longs for a taste. These smell like chocolate-covered cherries. Grand-mère wheezes with a rasp and a rattle that scares me. I yank off the blindfold. Grand-mère, are you okay? You're ready. She slides a wooden box carved with vineyards and women carrying basket of grapes on their heads. Inside lays a gold taste-of-in, a wine tasting cup in a long, heavy chain. Your great-grandpère, Nicholas Ruinart, used this cup to taste wine with the monks at Hauteville Abbey. Just by smelling the grapes, he could tell you the slope on the hill at which they grew, the exposure to the sun, the minerals in the soil. She closes her papery eyelids and inhales. Your grandpère was le nez, the nose. He passed down his special gift to you. There she goes again with her crazy notions. Maman says le nez is a curse. Grand-mère clucks her tongue. Your maman did not inherit le nez, so she doesn't understand it. It's a rare and precious gift, smelling the hidden essence of things. I took it for granted, and now it's gone. Her wrinkled hands pick up the gold taste-of-in and christen my nose. A prickling clusters in my sinuses like a powerful sneeze that won't release. I wish there was truth to Grand-mère's ramblings. It would explain so much about my finicky nature. You are le nez, Barbara Nicole. She lifts the chain over my head, and the cup nestles above my breasts. You must carry on Grand-père Ruinart's gift. Holding her bandaged head, Grand-mère canes incoherently. The lantern casts a monstrous shadow on the crier wall. Her tasting game has become a nightmare. Let's get you back to your room. I try to walk her up the stairs, but her legs give up. Lifting her bird-like body in my arms, I carry her as she carried me as a child, trying not to topple over into the crier. Promise me you'll carry on Lene, she says. My dear grandmother is dying in my arms, and now I know Lene is a curse. Promise me. Her eyelids flutter and close. I won't let you down, Grandmère, I whisper. She feels suddenly light in my arms, but the gold taste-of-in feels heavy, so very heavy around my neck.
Oh, that's a beautiful scene.
Thank you. And I want to show you as it relates to this. So Barbara Nicole had the talent to smell all these different beautiful scents in wine. And that's what winemakers do today. These are all the scents that just exist in Chardonnay. And so when a real expert smells a Chardonnay, they can tell you, oh, this one has apple or pear or orange or whatever. And it's a wonderful gift that I don't really possess, but I think I've spent my life trying to possess. So I do it vicariously through her.
That's amazing to have that sense of smell.
It is. This is a chart that they use, for instance. These are all that you can't really see it, but these are all the different scents in all the wines that they can pick out. And so she had that sense of being able to mix all the different grapes for a delicious wine. And everybody that's watching today has tasted terrible wine and great wine. And that's the difference, is the talent of the cook, the winemaker themselves that knows how to mix that recipe.
Do you complete all of your research before you begin writing your books, or do you do it as you go along? Was there a lot written about these widows that you found?
I was lucky enough with Madame Pommery and Champagne Widows to work with the historian. And my next book in this series, I'm working with the historian as well, but that's from 1800s. And so they don't know the things like, especially with Madame Pommery, the historian didn't know most of the things that I would ask. So then you start looking and searching and, seeing what you can find out about the different people that worked with her, and then you make a supposition. For instance, like, how did Madame Pommery, who was very older and didn't have a lot of money, how was she able to sell all her wine to the noblemen of Scotland? Well, I found out that she went to school and finishing school in London, and that her friends were these Scottish nobles. Well, that was lucky. And the winery never has said anything. I'll tell you a funny quick story. A funny thing is that I wrote all of Madame Pommery. Then I did that tour through Champagne last year. And I went to this beautiful Art Nouveau home, gorgeous. And it was where Madame Pommery's assistant lived. And I said, how could he build this magnificent castle? And then I asked their historian about it. And she said, well, of course, Madame Pommery and Henry Vasnier had an affair for 30 years, which is something I had actually asked Pommery, and they did not admit to it. They would not talk about it. And that's funny. And the same thing happened actually with The Secret Life of Mrs. London, which is about the love triangle between Houdini, Jack London, and his wife, Jack London's wife. And the historians here won't talk about that. But I found her diary and discovered all the little details. And that is so much fun when you find out. And that I love to do that, finding out things that people don't really know about the subject.
I love family secrets, and I love those that people don't want to talk about. And like you said, when you find one, it's just a jewel, and you can include that in your historical fiction or creative nonfiction, people are calling it now. You can take a historical figure and wrap her or him in fiction and let your imagination run wild.
It's great.
Rebecca, what does writing success look like to you personally?
Well, since we discussed all the different ups and downs of publishing and not publishing, and it doesn't make money the way that, my past businesses have made money. So for me, it's about having something exciting to think about and work at every day. And wouldn't everybody like to have something they love to do? And every morning I wake up, this morning I woke up, and before I even open my eyes, I'm thinking, okay, what's that next scene that I'm writing? And how can I'm in the second draft now. So I'm like, I don't really love how I did that. And this is such an important scene. How can I make it better? How can I make it more exciting so it's really clear and yet mysterious and exciting? So that it really excites me as a creative person to be able to create something on your own.
I totally agree. I just had this conversation with my husband yesterday, and he said, you're supposed to be retired. And I think you're working more hours than you ever did in your real job, And I said, we have to, especially in our age group. I want to have something to want to wake up every morning and be excited about. Does he want me to sit in front of the television all day?
And it's something that has a beginning and an end. And then you can decide if you're going to go on with the next one. I have several books waiting in the wings, and they have to earn my attention because it's something, that you're going to spend 2 years doing or a year doing. And then you have to be talking about it. And obviously you can tell I'm excited about the champagne story. So you have to be excited about whatever it is you're going to be talking about too. And it has to be worthwhile. Like, why do it if it's not worthwhile?
And as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
Get writing. And that idea you have is not going to write itself. I have a lot of friends who want to write books. They have such great stories, and the only way to do it is to dedicate at least a couple of hours every day to it. Because if you don't, you lose the storyline. I lose the energy of what is happening. And I have to think, now, where was I? And what did it mean? And all the things, this too, where something in the end has to be put in the beginning, you will lose all that weaving. So I think like the second draft, you are weaving things. I think of a loom, that you're taking that piece that's 3/4 the way through, and you have to make sure that you planted the seed in the beginning. And that's a very complicated process. So you have to write at least 2 hours every day, I think, 2 or 3 hours to make that story come to life. And then you will find that it gets easier and easier. And don't go back and edit your things, especially for the first. Well, don't ever do it. Do passes, do drafts. I love the idea of drafting. So I'm in my second draft, and then I'll be the third and the fourth and the fifth. And you'll know when it's starting to really get good.
That's great advice for all of us today. And I'm so happy you were here with us, because I can tell that you are as interesting and complicated and fascinating as the women that you're writing about. And I think you're just as bubbly as the champagne they created. So I appreciate your being here, and we're excited to now count you among our authors over 50.
So much. I had such a good time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend, and check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing, and remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.